Hi, Professor Page. This is my verbal response to Jason Reynolds, that short, 7-minute interview. Um, there are a few things that I find to be really thought-provoking and fascinating to think about. The first thing that comes to my mind that he said towards the end of the interview is how the first book that he actually enjoyed reading, or that he actually completed and read, was he read it when he was 17 and a half, and he said that one of the main reasons why he enjoyed it so much was because on the second page it was diving straight into the drama of the story, and it became really interesting really quick. And then he was going on to say how do we expect children to read 50 pages of exposition? And then he says also, no adult likes to read 50 pages of exposition. And I feel like this is a very progressive and realistic way of thinking when it comes to writing stories for adults and for children. And it also kind of makes me think about our education in America and just the whole entire system. As you know, I work at a preschool, and the form of the teaching philosophy is revolved around creative play-based learning and interactive interactions with student and teacher, and the teachers are learning with the students, and that's the philosophy, is we're giving the kids all the tools that they need to learn and grow, but we're not pushing one view upon them or one sort of structured way of creating something upon the kids, so they have that space and that freedom to sort things out for themselves. And that the reason why I just brought that up is because I feel like the future consists more of newer philosophies when it comes to education. And his point about we expect kids to read multiple pages of exposition when they're living in a 2-minute world, I think is super, super valid and important, and should be considered when thinking about the future of education, and also the present time in terms of education. And I feel like there are a lot of people who enjoy, or maybe not enjoy, but who also enjoy, but who find a lot more value in different ways of learning. That could be more visual learning, more hands-on learning, more interactive experiential learning, more conversational learning, you're talking about a bunch of things with your classmates and with your teachers, which I think this class is has been a lot of. It's obviously visual because we're reading stories and looking at stories, but also just the way that we've learned in this class, and our assignments have been very, for me personally, watching interviews and listening to TED Talks and listening to podcasts and reading articles, those ways light me up so much. And it's just, I feel like now I'm ranting, but it's just interesting to think about our expectations as a culture, right now, when it comes to education and curriculums, and how I think those boundaries need to be pushed and recreated for sure. And I feel really passionate about the school that I work for, and I feel really passionate about alternative ways and modes of learning for children especially, but also for adults. And so yeah, I thought that was super interesting. And then I also thought it was interesting when he said that he feels like he didn't read until late because he didn't have anyone presenting themselves. He didn't have any authors presenting themselves in his, he said something about how he never had access to authors. I'm trying to remember exactly. I can understand it in my mind, but I'm having a hard time articulating it, obviously. He said that he wasn't able to have access to authors and what they were doing, but he said if someone were to show up right in front of him and they had this book and they were in real time, this person who's this author and he has this book, he probably would have he would have read sooner or been more receptive to reading. And so that's why he's making it a goal for himself to show up as an author and have a presence, and be visual, he's there for kids to see. Another thing that I thought was interesting was how he talks about how reading is cool and how a lot of kids like to do what the cool thing is to do. And I just hadn't really thought about that too much, but I do recall like being younger and reading a lot of different books like The Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. And basically like when I reflect back on it, I was pretty like introverted as a kid and stayed in my room and read when I got home from school. And it was that was like the best thing for me. But I remember reading books because I have a twin brother, and he read these books, and I thought he was like the coolest person ever. I still do think that. But it's interesting because like any book he would read, I would borrow it after him, because like I'm like, this book is definitely cool because he's reading it. So that was just kind of like a really interesting thing to think about that I don't think I've thought about before. But it's also very exciting that reading books is cool and trendy, because what a beautiful gift it is to be able to digest a story, especially when your brain is in such early stages of developing and expanding, and you're just like, you're having all of these like new ideas and perceptions being born about the world. So yeah, that is what I think about that interview, and I'm gonna send more for all the rest of the conversations, so stay tuned.